So we could say that this end of a cycle represents us moving beyond our egoic identity and starting to identify more as cosmic beings, or more as the frequency or the energy or consciousness, or even God, if you want to use that analogy, rather than from a singular, separate ego self. And that eventually leads to unity, which is the opposite of separateness. And we are all, if you are watching this, yearning to experience more of a unified field. Let's talk about this unified field. The moment I say that, I'm presented with the idea of love. When we experience life from the space of unity, we experience life more from the space of love versus fear or scarcity. And of course, as you all know, love is a higher vibration frequency than scarcity or fear. That is not to say that one is better or one is worse, although one feels definitely better than the other. But this is essentially representing a polarity. And we humans are used to living in polarity. Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome to my channel. My name is Joanna. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your valuable time with me and my team. And my ultimate goal is to help you understand yourself as you move through this thing we call life, as you transition from the old to the new, as you become more of yourself and understanding the deeper truth or the higher truth of who you really are. So if you are into this sort of thing, I hope you enjoy what you hear. And if you do like what you hear, I would love for you to share, like, comment. Ultimately, the more this information finds people, its owners, the more these people can benefit from this higher vibrational frequency or higher vibrational information. And this information is meant to help us become higher version of ourselves. And when I say the word become, it's not to become higher version of ourselves, because we are those version of ourselves right now. We are just not identifying with the higher version of ourselves. We essentially identify with our ego. So this information is geared to help us understand ourselves from a much higher perspective, from your multidimensional self perspective, rather than just from an identified separate ego. And this is essentially what humanity is going through. It is going through a process of understanding itself from a much, much higher perspective, and therefore creating the difference in what we call life. So if you are here listening to this, thank you so much for being here. And I do hope you enjoy what you hear. For those of you who are returning, thank you so much. Of course, without you, there would be no need for me to channel this information, and I enjoy channeling this higher frequency because it makes me feel very much like I'm at home, which means Earth is not my home. Earth is not your home either. You are temporarily occupying a physical body on this planet called Earth. And Earth is a vibrational being as well. And Earth, or planet Earth, is going through her own ascension, as you know. And because she is our host and we are on her, within her experience, we too are moving up vibrationally to higher levels, if I can use that analogy. So today we'll talk a little bit about the frequencies that the general frequencies that humanity can benefit from, the frequencies that we are surrounded by, if you will, so that we can draw upon this frequency in order to help us transform and create new experiences. So if you are listening to this, you are on board with that on some level. In fact, it is what you have been seeking and what you have been asking for all of your life, most of your life. And for some of you, this asking was not something that was conscious, but you are now consciously asking for more information to help you become this higher version of yourself. So this information is intended to give you just that. So the first part will be collective message, and then I have, or messages, and then I have 3 individual piles, which are a little bit more specific, and each pile represents, has something for you. So whichever pile you are drawn to, there will be something there for you. Bear in mind that these are general messages, and they may not necessarily apply to everyone. Although I will say this, they do and can apply to everyone, but not everyone is ready for these messages. And it's like giving a student information from grade 12, when the student is in grade 1. The student needs to have a certain level of understanding in order to understand the grade 12 material. And this is not about better or not as good. It's everybody is vibrating on his or her own frequency, and each message will find its owner based on its frequency. So if something is not resonating with you, it doesn't mean that it's not for you, but it just may not be for you right now, and that's absolutely okay. So make sure that you use discernment. The thing that you really want to do with this information, with these messages, is to feel into these messages and notice how your body responds or resonates with it. If on some level there is a discord within your body as you are listening to these vibrations, as you are communing with these vibrations, then pause and ask yourself, is this information the right information for me right now? And if your answer is no, then just move on to a different pile or just disregard the message for now. You might be surprised that you come back to this message 2 or 3 months later, and all of a sudden a light bulb will go off in your head and you're going to say, I know exactly what this means right now. That's because you have grown in your own understanding, and this message may now resonate with you. So what I want to talk about today is actually the question I wrote is, how do we move out of our current patterns, which are defined by limiting cycles? That was the question to my team. And the answer I got was, well, actually very simple, but it's something that's quite complicated, it seems. One of the ways to move out of our current patterns is to see what our patterns are. And to understand your base or your foundation, our base or our foundation, is the best predictor of our future endeavors. Knowing yourself in terms of your foundation, knowing yourself in terms of foundation. So my understanding of this answer is that one sure way to release cycles or end old cycles and old patterns is to understand and know ourselves more fully. That's because how we know ourselves, what our understanding is of ourselves, will give us our experiences. Therefore, if we are in the process or trying to create different experiences, we must understand the creative process and what you believe you are. You are not that which you do not believe. So we have to look at or pay attention to our deeply unconscious, subconscious beliefs, because those beliefs are essentially a foundation upon which we create this thing called life. And if you are listening to this kind of information, you already know that you are a powerful creator. You've heard this before many times, and if you haven't, you are a powerful creator. You create your real. How do you create your real? By knowing yourself in a certain way. In other words, if you know yourself as a person who, okay, all right, a person who has or who holds contempt towards authority, you will create a life from the perspective of that contempt. And what this contempt may look like, you may disregard authority, not only external authority, but also internal authority, most importantly, your own authority. So if humanity is in contempt towards authority, certain authority, and there may be very good reasons for it, humanity is also in contempt of its own authority. And if we are contempt of our own authority, we will likely reject our own authority, which means we will give our authority to someone else, and then someone else becomes our authority. So essentially, we author life through somebody else's lens. Do we want to do that? Chances are the answer is no. Why would you want to experience life through somebody else's lens? Wouldn't it be better to experience life from your own lens? Why are we talking about this? Because it is the shifting of lenses that we are going through right now. We're beginning to realize that we see life through various lenses being concepts. And these concepts are very much part of our foundation, which are then reflected to the outer life, which is what we call our experiences and our real. Because we are at the end of a cycle, humanity is going through an end of a cycle. And as the word implies, life always moves in cycles. We could say that we are at the point of an end and a new beginning. But this beginning has a certain feel to it. As we are approaching an ending of a cycle, we need to look at what we have learned from experiencing the cycles that we are about to leave behind. And our cycles are basically frequencies, are levels of consciousness, let's use that analogy, which then allows us to practice life in specific ways. And I said the word practice. Why practice? Because we are effectively every day practicing life based on our level of consciousness. Yes, we are practicing life based on what we know. So how do we move out of our current limiting patterns? Is to know what we don't know or what we are not aware on an unconscious level. In other words, is to understand our foundations, which are deeply rooted in our past, and these foundations represent our foundations upon which we will create our life. And if we are powerful creators, which we are, and we create based on our structure, based on our inner foundation, then in order for us to move out of a cycle and begin a new cycle with different experiences, we must start from a different foundation. Now, in order to create a new foundation, we first have to understand what the current foundation is. And when I talk about foundations, I'm talking about belief systems. So you have varying degrees of beliefs in and around you. Your beliefs surround you all the time. In fact, you are one massive bag of beliefs. Your identity essentially is a concept that is made up of your beliefs, and we adopt these beliefs, and this creates our identity, our separate self. But when we live in the consciousness of separateness, we live in a space of, I want to say the space of lack, more so than unity. Why do we live in a space of lack when we live in a space of separateness? Because the very idea of separateness denotes lack of something. in order to feel separate, to be separate, we have to identify ourselves as separate then. And the separate then allows us to have a certain experience, but it also separates us all from what is. And what is nothing more and nothing less than extraordinarily high level of pure consciousness. And consciousness is. There is nothing other than consciousness. You and I are a part of this consciousness, but we don't think of ourselves as part of this consciousness. We don't think of ourselves as part of the one. We think of ourselves as separate. And when we live in a state of separateness, we identify primarily with our ego, or what we call the I. Okay? And the structure of an ego is to be purposely very selfish, because ego identity, or to be identified as ego, basically means that there is okay, they're saying when we identify as ego, we have this understanding that there is death. Okay, so when we identify as a separate ego, okay, we also identify with the idea of death. And the ego structure is constructed in such a way is that it is always trying to prevent itself from death, because it wants to be all the time. So there is a built-in fear of dying built into the structure of an ego. Therefore, ego is always, first and foremost, looking after I. It's looking after itself. And when we look after ourselves from a space of separateness, we identify as lack. Why? Because, again, to experience life as a separate being, as a space, from a space of separation, we disconnect primarily in the mind from the idea that we are all one and that we are part of everything. And therefore, if we live in the separateness, we believe that we are also limited, and there are limitations in terms of what we can create and what we can achieve. The reality is this: we can achieve tremendous feats, but we do not believe that we can. Why? Because we come from a space of lack, precisely what I've been saying. So why are we talking about this lack concept? Because when we live in a space of lack, and when we live in a space of separation, we do not identify ourselves as equal. We identify ourselves as different. And different, or the idea of different, is an experience. Different can also be seen as unique. But the way humans tend to identify different a lot of the time is we assigned better, good or worse, better or not as good. We assign these labels to the idea of differences. When we live in a space of separateness, we live in terms of polarity: good, bad, solid, not solid, night, day. This is what gives us our human experience, but we are more than just humans. In other words, if we continue to identify as separate only, we will lose on the ability to create so much more for ourselves, because in order to create more of ourselves, we have to be able to believe and experience that yes, we can, versus no, we can't. And the idea of yes, I can comes a space of everything being in all places and at all times. And the idea of can't means that is not the case. So many humans identify based on what they can't do. And that's very prevalent. Whenever we identify with what we are not, on what we can't, we are identifying from a space of lack or separateness. And humanity is shifting. we are gearing up, if you will, and the very idea of concepts, labels, limitations, and lack is something that many humans are looking at and are beginning to recognize that those are all just constructs that come with being a human being. But we are more than just these constructs, because we are also more than human beings. So we are learning to re-identify ourselves as more than just the ego I. We are learning or yearning or desiring to, or moving forward to identifying ourselves more as what's the word I want to use, please? Reflections of oneness, or reflections of oneness. That's what I want to say. And when we identify as a reflection of oneness, we begin to identify with abundance, more of what is, versus lack. So we could say that this end of a cycle represents us moving beyond our egoic identity and starting to identify more as cosmic beings, or more as the frequency or the energy or consciousness, or even God, if you want to use that analogy, rather than from a singular, separate ego self. And that eventually leads to unity, which is the opposite of separateness. And we are all, if you are watching this, yearning to experience more of a unified field. Let's talk about this unified field. The moment I say that, I'm presented with the idea of love. When we experience life from the space of unity, we experience life more from the space of love versus fear or scarcity. And of course, as you all know, love is a higher vibration frequency than scarcity or fear. That is not to say that one is better or one is worse, although one feels definitely better than the other. But this is essentially representing a polarity. And we humans are used to living in polarity. This is a very polarized world, and the reason for this polarization is to have our experiences. In other words, we derive meaning from living in a space of polarities. Example, in order for you to understand what hot is, you have to experience what cold is. Otherwise, if you only experience hotness, you don't know what hotness is, because you don't have the polar opposite experience to tell you what hotness is not. Okay, so that in essence is the structure of polarity, is to help us gain meaning of our experiences. Why would we want this meaning? Well, the purpose of a soul is really to experience. What does it mean to experience? It's to embody something. What's the purpose of embodiment? To embody something is a level of understanding. When we embody ourselves as separate, we gain an understanding of what separateness is. On the other hand, when we embody our experiences, or when we embody more of a higher frequency love, then our experience is that based on that. We embody more perspective, or we have an understanding more of perspective, what love is and what love is not. Humanity has gone through a lot of cycles where love has not been the prevailing factor. The prevailing factor has been fear. And humanity understands what fear is. In fact, I believe we are experts at what fear is. But humanity also wants to experience what fear is not. So in order to experience, embody what fear is not, we have to move out of that experience and move vibrationally into another experience. When we live in a space of separation, we also live in a space of fear. When we live from a space of separation, we identify a lot more with fear rather than love. And as you know, fear is a very dense vibration, and experiencing life from a space of fear can feel frequency-wise dense, slow, and I want to say murky. Okay. Now, if all we know is fear, then we don't know what other is. We have no reason to believe that there is anything other than. But what is happening right now is a lot more people are beginning to experience life outside of their normal fear. How is this happening? What I'm seeing is a lot of people getting light through their crown chakra that is then going through their body, and bodies or humans are getting higher frequency that comes from higher realms. I'm gonna use that analogy. I don't have any other words to use it. And what this higher frequency is doing is introducing a higher vibration, one that is more aligned with love, which is the opposite of fear. So essentially what we are seeing here, what we are talking about, is planet Earth is moving more from a dense place and fear-based space into more of a frequency that is of higher nature, one that is more aligned with unity and love. So if you are here, you are on an assignment. And I said, okay, what assignment is this? Essentially, your assignment, if you will, if you can use that analogy, is for you to remember your own power. Now, if your mission is for you to remember your power, then that means that you must first forget what power is, or you must forget your own power. And that's the polarity. On one hand, we have a powerful being, which is you, that is experiencing life from a disempowered state. And it's very interesting because frequency-wise, when we are feeling disempowered, we are vibrating much lower than when we feel empowered. Because what it means to feel empowered is to embody our true power. Now, if you only identify, or if we only identify as separate beings, then it's very difficult to tap into this power, because this higher power is made up of unity and consciousness. So in order for us to embody this higher consciousness, we have to expand our understanding of ourselves. Or to say it differently, we have to move beyond the understanding of what our ego is. In other words, we understand ourselves from the perspective of our ego, and we are now choosing or moving more towards understanding ourselves from a much higher perspective, from the perspective of a unified field or higher consciousness, which is also aligned with love. So you are here on a mission to remember who you are. Why would that be important? Well, it's important for one reason, and one reason only. When you begin to remember who you are, you begin to embody more of your true power. Okay? And that is essentially what everyone wants. Everyone wants to just be themselves. And when I say themselves, I mean their true essence. But we have this identity that stands in a way that tells us who we are or who we're supposed to be and who we are not. And we begin to identify with that. And that is a much less powerful state, empowered state, than the other empowered state. So your mission is to remember your own power so that you can begin to anchor these higher frequency, which is higher frequency light, using your human body and anchoring that frequency to planet Earth. This is also how she ascends. So that is your mission. So how do we get more empowered? Again, we get more empowered by understanding what our foundation is. Foundation is our truth. When we understand our deep truth, we begin to understand how we create and what reasons do we create for. A lot of the time we create because we are fear-based, so we create based on fear. But imagine vibrating and not having the foundation of fear within your own embodiment, and you are then beginning to create from a space of love and lack, L-U-C-K, luck, versus scarcity. That's a much more empowered state, because in that empowered state, we realize we can be and achieve anything that we want, which is very difficult for the ego to comprehend. So again, in order to vibrate higher, to move into this higher frequency, that's more aligned with love, we have to almost disidentify ourselves with our ego. Not to discount the ego, not to push the ego away, because you have your ego in order to have your unique experience, but to loosen the grip on our ego, or loosen the grip the ego has on our true selves. In other words, if we are gripping only to our identity, to our human identity, and our human identity is often based in lack, then we are gripping onto lack. When we begin to loosen up the grip on our identity, and we begin to embody that which is beyond our human identity, then the ego does not have as big of a grip on who we are, and we are able to experience a lot more of our true selves and a lot more of life in positive ways. So you are here to remember who you are, which ultimately leads you to your own freedom. What does this freedom look like? Well, part of you experiencing greater freedom is the understanding of your powerful creative force, or is an understanding of you being a powerful creative force. What does it mean to be creative force? It means you're a force that creates. So if you are a force that creates, and force can create anything, you are essentially moving towards the more of an embodiment of being a powerfully creative force without the identity. You still have your identity, but you're loosely holding on to it rather than letting your identity define you. And that is where freedom comes from. Because when we identify ourselves in a certain way, we live in a box. When we loosen up the box, or when we make the box bigger, we have a lot more room to experience life from in different ways, with different experiences. I'm looking at the card of Divine Feminine. Okay, this is the energy that's supporting us right now. I'm going to read this. The frequency of Divine Feminine supports our receptive, nurturing, and soft side, allowing it to express itself openly and helping us to connect to our intrinsic understanding of our connection to all creation. This is basically what I was just channeling. This energy is very much in support of us remembering who we are, that we are creative beings, that we are creators. Essentially, we are creators of our own life. So as we are coming up towards the end of a certain cycle, and we take this new understanding with ourselves and start to create new cycle, we will begin to create a new cycle more from an empowered state rather than a disempowered state. Okay, I'm looking at the number 2 and 1, and what I want to say is new beginnings, choices. So we are standing in front of choices as Our life is unfolding as new opportunities present themselves, as we create new beginnings. These new beginnings will require us to make certain choices. The question is this: will we make these choices based on our past and what we have learned from our past? Or will we make choices from the space of scarcity, from the space of fear? And if you are watching this, I can pretty much guarantee you that you are not here to create more from a space of fear because you are a pioneer. You are here to create from a space of love versus from a space of lack. But in order to do that, you have to first have an understanding of your foundation. If our own foundation has within it a lot of lack constructs, then we will be recreating more lack, and that is not what we want. The universe is abundant. The universe contains within it everything. You, I, we are all part of universe, which means within ourselves we contain everything that is. It is just not externalized in this physical form. You have a physical form, we have a physical form, because that is a certain way of understanding ourselves through the physicality of a human body, which is a physical form. But you are also tapped in to the grandness of what is. And because we are all tapped into the grandness of what is, that means we have access to everything that is. And that's very difficult for human mind to comprehend, because the human mind thinks in terms of linear. If a human believes that they are limited, then they cannot comprehend how they can be unlimited at the same time. Well, humans believe they are limited because of their limiting concepts they hold about themselves. So we are, as humanity, learning about the concepts that we hold about ourselves that are limiting to our creation. Okay? So this energy is supporting us in order to help us understand us as the creators that we are, and what space do we create from, which is our foundations. So one way is to move out of current patterns, limiting patterns, is to understand ourselves and to know our belief system. The second one is curiosity. It's having the curiosity, what could be. Humanity is where it is at right now, but humanity is also wondering or asking themselves, what could be? What could be? Here's the thing. The what could be already is. It already lives in the consciousness itself. The only thing is that we are not experiencing this other what could be. I'm going to see if I can say it in a slightly different way. In other words, what we believe to be true is. What we also don't believe to be true isn't. Reality is everything is and everything isn't, all at the same time. Again, this is hard concept for many humans to grasp. We both are and we both are not. How is that possible? Well, you are a human, but you are also not a human. You are also part of consciousness, but you are also human at the same time. So you are both separate and you are both unified all at the same time. The difference is that you experience life and you create life from the space of separateness, not from the space of unity. Okay? And as I talked about before, when we create from a space of separateness, we create, and not from unity, we often create out of lack. So the question, what could be, is really about the curiosity, what we could create if we had the right information, the right tools, and the right understandings. And this is what I wrote. Principles of life. You are what you believe. What you believe creates vibrational sequence. This sequence represents your ultimate truth. Your own identity is, in fact, a sequence of vibrational truths you hold about yourself. Knowing this is what sets you apart from those who believe that life just is without one's input. Yet what we say is that it is your input or output that effectively creates your experience. So essentially what this is saying is that we create based on what our truth is. Okay? And that truth represents a certain vibration. And knowing what our truth is sets us apart from those who believe that life just happens. And what they're saying here is that life doesn't happen. Life doesn't just happen. Life is the consequence of what we are creating. And what we are creating is based on our assumptions and beliefs we hold about ourselves and the beliefs we hold about our future. So, but whatever beliefs we hold about our future is likely the future we are going to create, because what we hold as truth is. So it's very important for humanity to realize that it needs to understand its ultimate truths right now. What are the organizing truths that we depend on in order to create life? Okay. For example, nothing against religion, but religion holds a certain truth. It is an aspect of truth, but it's not the truth. Truth is so much more. So in many ways, as good as religion can be for some people, religion in and of itself is limiting. Why? Because something religious means it's a concept. Okay? The moment we make something a concept is the moment we put something in the box. So if you believe in religion only, whatever your religion is, then you believe in a certain concept. Does that mean that there is nothing outside of that concept? No, everything is. You are just choosing to believe based on that concept. So right now, and concepts, like I said, are limiting. So right now, we are needing to look at what are our limiting concepts we hold about life, our future, what we believe, what we don't believe, what's real and what's not real. And that is eventually going to set us all free. But freedom is not something that just happens. Freedom is something that is created. So if we are in the process of creating more freedom, then that means we are essentially in a space where freedom is not as opulent as we would like freedom to be. But if everything is all at the same time, then that means that the freedom that we are seeking, for example, already is. So why are we not experiencing freedom? Simple. We are not experiencing freedom because what we are experiencing instead is based on our foundation and understanding of ourselves. So if we want to experience more freedom, we need to understand the limitations we hold about ourselves as individuals, human beings, and as society. And the more limitations we hold about ourselves, the more we will limit ourselves, and the more we will limit our sense of freedom. In other words, to feel more unlimited, we have to let go of what is holding us back from this freedom. Okay? And I'm not talking about freedom, somebody being jailed. I'm talking about the freedom we feel on the inside, the freedom that we feel in order to create, to be all that we could be, versus believing that we can't, we're not supposed to, we're not allowed. Okay, so this is a very opportune time to look at our own foundations. And again, with closing old cycles and beginning new cycles, taking this understanding so that we can create, in order to create something different, something better for ourselves, and something better for humanity as a whole. So that's what I have for the general message. And now let's move on to individual messages that might be probably a little bit more focused on you. So whatever you're drawn to, there's likely a message there for you. Remember, these are general message. They may not all apply to you, but chances are if you're drawn to one or two or three, there's a nugget or two in there for you. All right. All right, pile one, number one, let's see what we have for you. When I was tuning into your energy, I heard the phrase higher understanding. So likely for you, pile number one, your focus is going to be on your higher understanding of yourself. So what we have here is embrace, which is coming to me in reverse position. We have Wizard of Awareness, and we have the energy of Miracle, 33. Okay. Pile number one, your understanding of yourself is about how you hold yourself back, how you keep yourself away emotionally from other people, or physically, but this is more about emotionally. How are you not being in support of yourself? What could that look like? Well, self-neglect is one way of not being support to yourself. What does self-neglect mean? If you think of the idea of neglecting your child, you are effectively neglecting your child's needs, and because of that neglect, the child cannot thrive. Okay? It'll survive, but it'll not thrive. So when you are in neglect of yourself, you are essentially not allowing yourself to thrive. Now, why would you not want to thrive? Everyone wants to thrive. It's not a matter of you not wanting to. It's more of a matter of maybe you don't know how to thrive. Maybe you have been so used to holding back that you don't even realize that you holding back emotionally is something that does not allow you to thrive. Now, what does thrive mean? Thrive means more than just to survive. I just heard, having realistic view of yourself doesn't mean you cannot be more. Okay? So some of you identify with yourself as having a realistic view. I have a very realistic view of myself. What does that mean? What does that mean to have a realistic view of yourself? It means you hold a certain vision of yourself, but just because you have that vision, which is realistic, whatever that means, define realistic. When I say realistic, I'm just going to tune more into this energy. When we say to ourselves, I have a realistic view, it means that we have certain parameters upon which we see ourselves, and we don't allow ourselves to see beyond that because we believe that's unrealistic. Okay? So although, yes, if you think of yourself as a human without wings, that's a realistic view, because chances are, as a human, you're not going to grow wings. Generally, human structure is not one with wings, although you never know. Okay, so that's just an example. That's just to give us the flavor of what's being talked about. So pile number one, you need to look, well, you don't need to, but it would behoove you to look at what your realistic view of you is that is actually confining to you. Perhaps one of your realistic views is, I will only make this much money because that's realistic. Me making $1 million, as an example, is not realistic. Why? Why is it not realistic to you? It's only not realistic to you because you do not believe that it can be real. As simple as that. Okay? The moment you believe something is real is the moment you open up to that opportunity, to that possibility that can come to you in various different ways. And the human mind may not understand how, but then you allow your spirit to lead the way. When you say to yourself, I am realistic about myself, you are putting your ego spin on you only, which means you are making your realistic view from the space of your structured and limited ego. And nothing wrong with that, but if you are listening to this, you already know that you go beyond your ego. And in most cases, our ego is what holds us back. So if you identify with holding back, there is a part of your identity that is holding back, and it has a very good reason for it. And There could be many reasons, likely more than one, but there's always a reason. For you, it's important to identify how you hold yourself back and why. And we all do it. Every single human does that because we are born to the idea of limitations. Nonetheless, that belief makes up our foundation and our structure. And that foundation and structure is how you create your life. So looking at how you hold yourself back is going to be a good indicator of what you can see for yourself in the future. Because if you've learned to hold back, and if you continue to hold back without looking at the cause as to why you hold back, which when you look at the cause as to why you hold back, you can shift and you can change it. But let's say you don't look at the cause of why you hold back. You keep on holding yourself back. And therefore, if you keep holding yourself back the way you used to hold yourself back, then it's realistic to say that you will essentially have the same experience. But chances are you want a different experience. So your understanding of yourself, your higher understanding of yourself, is how you hold yourself back. Okay? What's the predominant reason why we hold ourselves back? Give me few. Give me two. Fear of being abandoned. Okay? Fear of rejection. Fear of not being good enough. Fear of lacking, which is not good enough. Those are the classic reasons why fear of pain, okay, which rejection is pain. Those are the classic reasons why we hold back, okay? Why do I say classic? Because they're classic human reasons, okay? But, and those vibrations are fear-based. We always hold ourselves back based on some often unrecognized fear. But fear is an opportunity to shift our perspective. So the moment we understand our fear, we can look beyond the fear, because fear often acts as a protective mechanism. When we understand what we are trying to protect ourselves from, and when we realize that the thing we're trying to protect ourselves from is nothing more than illusion, we often let go of that need to protect ourselves. Okay? For example, if you never learn to drive a car because you're afraid that you're going to get into an accident, then you are missing on life. Because in our world, cars serve a purpose and they get us from point A to point B. It doesn't mean you have to drive a car, but most people drive a car because it's a mode of transportation. It gives us greater freedom. If you don't allow yourself to drive because you believe that you're going to get into an accident, then you are missing on that freedom. Okay? Does that mean that accidents don't happen? No. But chances are high that they're likely not to happen. Okay? So what we are saying here is this: our limitations are keeping us from something that we believe could be. But what if something else can be? What if something actually can be better than the thing we're trying to protect ourselves from? So if you're holding back, pile number one, it's important for you to understand why you hold back and what you are trying to protect yourself from. Because you have a good reason for it. And the moment you deal with that reason, the moment you deal with this conflict, with this pain, if you will, this inner pain, is the moment where you will leave that limiting part of you behind. You learn from it and you will move on towards your future in much more unlimited ways. Okay? Wizard of awareness. What you know, you know. What you don't know, you don't know. It's time for you to know that which you don't know yet. It's about seeking. It's about looking deeper. It's about digging deeper into your own internal truths. I talk about truths a lot because the truths that we hold about ourselves and our life are responsible for our creation. And you create based on your own understanding of yourself. And your theme, if you will, right now is higher understanding. So this is about helping you move, or choosing to move to a space of your own understanding where you haven't been before. It's to discover something new about yourself through self-analysis, through meditation, through yoga, through mindfulness exercises, through breath work, ways that allow us to go beyond our limited mind, our limited ego self. When you begin to understand yourself from higher perspective, you begin to create your life anew. Why? Because higher perspective gives you more choices. Here's the thing, the choices have always been there, but because of your current perspective, you cannot see it. So oftentimes what happens is we begin to have a higher understanding of ourselves, which really means we see things from a different perspective. And then all of a sudden, we realize that there's all these different options and choices that are available to us now because of our new understanding. And we begin to create life based on choices, not based on what always has been, which is a pattern. The energy for you is miracle, which is absolutely beautiful because you understand the idea of miracle. Miracle, I can't even describe what a miracle is. Miracle is amazing. Miracles are beautiful. Miracles are powerful. Miracles are extraordinarily positive. So what I want to say is expect miracles. That's kind of a given. I'm looking at the number 3. Expansion of your own foundations, which leads to a greater balance of self. Now, as long as you are embodying this human body, you will identify on some level with the idea of self. However, your identification with the self only is going to be less and less and less. And I feel that that's the miracle. You are essentially seeing yourself anew. You're seeing yourself for that which you can be versus that which you have been. So you are seeing yourself from the perspective of what could be, not only from the perspective of what was. Because if we identify ourselves with what was and we hold on to that identity, anything we are holding on to, we will project to the outside. We will create our real. So when you begin to see yourself from the space of what could be versus from what you have been, you are letting the what has been be part of your past and what could be part of your future. And you're at that threshold right now. So I'm going to read this to you. The frequency of miracles supports our belief in ourselves as part of Source and therefore our belief that anything is possible. Couldn't have said it better myself. Okay. In other words, you want a different life for yourself? Understand how you create your life in the now. How do you create your own life? Because you are a co-creator. You don't create your life by yourself. Co-creation happens all around us. You are a co-creator, but you are a co-creator of your own experience. So if you are desiring a different experience, a higher vibrational experience, it is very important to look at how you are creating your current experience, particularly if you are not too fond of your current experience. And humanity is not overly fond of its current experience. That's why we are now moving to this higher frequency, because we want to experience different experience, a higher vibrational experience. Likely, a lot of your experiences stem or are rooted in the idea of lack and fear, and that has been your experience. That's one end of the polarity. And now you are choosing to move to the other side, which is more connected to love, abundance, and luck as in LUCK, as in plenty. Okay, so you're at this threshold right now, and it's as if to say that you are deciding, which way do I go forward? Do I go forward based on what has been in the past, or do I go forward towards the future by creating my own future, in the now? And that has to happen first through your higher understanding of yourself. You cannot create a different future if you don't know how you create your current now. So this is a really big opportunity for you, pile number one, to recreate your life from anew by recognizing how you currently are creating your future in the moment. Okay, I'm going to throw a very basic example. If you are experiencing a lot of lack, L-A-C-K, in terms of money, if that is your experience comes from the space that says something is. In other words, you're identifying money with the idea of lack. So money and lack go hand in hand, very likely. And if you hold that idea of lack around money, then lack is, because you're holding it. And the best you can do is whatever you hold within, whatever you embody, you project out into the world and create your experiences. And many people hold lack around money. It's one of those things in our human world, because we come a lot from a space of scarcity. Scarcity is fed to us all the time. But remember, we may feel scarce, we may experience scarce, but we are also enveloped by abundance. Except we don't have visibility to this abundance because we are not focusing on this abundance vibration. We are focusing on the vibration of lack and scarcity. Okay? So there's a shift here. There's a very big shift for you, pile number one, that's in the works. And that is not happening by itself. That is happening because you are choosing to create this shift for yourself. Now, again, if I go to the main message, you are here on assignment. If you are listening to these messages, you are on assignment. You are choosing to be part of this lower consciousness in order to anchor higher consciousness. So it only makes logical sense that you would be in a space of discovering your higher aspect of self and making that a conscious reality within your life, which means you embody your higher consciousness. The moment you embody your higher consciousness, you emit more light. So essentially, we could say that your mission here is to emit more of light. Now, anything that is dense in nature holds within itself relatively less light, as opposed to the ultimate truth, which is the highest vibration is love, unconditional love, which is also light. Okay? So by embodying more of your own light and by expressing more of this light onto planet Earth, you are essentially expanding more light into planet Earth. And when every single person does that, we will have a planet that is vibing in light versus in darkness. And we do have a lot of darkness in this world. Is this going to happen overnight? No, it's going to take some time, but you are a pioneer. Remember, if you're listening to this, you're a pioneer. And the biggest job you have is to be responsible for yourself. As an adult, of course, if you're a healthy, functioning human, to be responsible for yourself. Does that mean that you don't have responsibilities? Of course you do, but if you are not responsible for yourself and you are responsible for others, then you are not living out your life. You are living life for others. Okay? I'll buy that. Tell me a little bit more. In terms of responsibility, what we mean is this. You are, for the most part, responsible for how you experience your life. That is your responsibility. No one can take that away from you. If you give that responsibility to someone else, then someone else is responsible for how you live your life. Now, what if that way of living your life is something that you don't want? Then what you have to do is you have to take back your responsibility for how you experience your life. Okay, so pile number one, it's a lot about how you experience your life, and are you happy with the way you are experiencing your life right now? If you are experiencing your life from a space of, let's say, unhappiness, then we have to look at your truths, okay? Because your truths will define your experiences, and identify the aspects of you that are unhappy, that feel unhappy, that are holding into this vibrational sequence we call unhappiness, which is the opposite of happiness. Now, I would say that most human beings want to be relatively happy, because it's the opposite of unhappiness. And when we are not happy, it doesn't feel so good. When we are happy, generally it feels very good. I have never felt happy when it didn't feel good, and vice versa. I've never felt unhappy and it felt good. So we could say that the polarity of unhappiness and happiness is what we are dealing with. Because you have already experienced unhappiness, you know what that is. You now have a choice to move into more happiness, but it is a choice. Everyone's happiness is their own choice. Does that mean that the environment does not add or contribute to our happiness? Not at all. Of course it does, but ultimately the responsibility is ours. So pile number one, I want to say choose to be happy. Now, in order for you to choose to be happy, you have to identify how you are choosing to be right now. And the word choosing I'm using loosely, because no one chooses to be unhappy. Nobody chooses to be unhappy. It's not a conscious choice. But it is the type of choosing that happens on an unconscious level, whereby our certain beliefs, usually limiting beliefs, keep us stuck in a certain unhappy state. So again, it's about identifying those limiting beliefs that keep us away from experiencing more happiness. Okay. So that's what I have for pile number one, and I hope this was helpful. All right, pile number two, let's see what we have for you. When I was focusing on your energy, the word I got was relaxation. So the first thing we have is priorities in reverse. We have into the unknown, and we have the energy of integration. Okay, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So let me just go through each message. Relaxation. What I hear is relax your mind, your body will follow, which is telling me that your mind is not in a relaxed state. Why is your mind not in a relaxed state? Okay, let's see. Why? Okay, because you're focusing on what's wrong. The more we focus on what is wrong, which unfortunately is also the case anytime we turn on TV, when we're focusing on what is wrong, we cannot experience anything other than what we focus on. Therefore, we experience more of what is wrong. You, pile number two, perhaps are putting too much effort in focusing on what you believe is wrong in your life or wrong with you. In fact, remember, there is nothing wrong with you. You are part of consciousness itself, and because of that, you contain within you all that is. There is everything about what is right. Okay? So the idea of something being wrong with you is I want to say it's an anomaly. The reason why it's an anomaly is because it's not your natural state of being. You as a being outside of this corporal structure never identify with yourself as something being wrong with you. Why? Because you understand where you come from, you understand who you are, and you understand your capabilities, and you are not holding on to limiting belief systems. Okay? So it is your limiting belief systems about yourself that give you this idea that something must be wrong. Okay? Now, if your arm is not functioning, for example, we could say that structurally something is wrong with the structure. We need to look at it. That does not, however, mean that something is wrong with you, because you are not your body. You embody your body, your physical structure. There might be something wrong with it, but nothing is wrong with you, because you are not your body. You are not your identity. And it looks like pile number 2, you are identifying with more so what is wrong with you or what you're lacking versus more of what is right with you and what you have and who you are, and your true embodiment of. I'm just going to let that one go. This is an intensive period for you, pile number 2, because it is showing me that you are looking at old programming. And when we look at our old programming, it is often the type of programming we don't want to look at because it's old. Sometimes it's hard to access. But more than anything, when we look at our old programming, we realize that this old programming is our current programming, but it's also the type of programming that we might not want. And the moment we realize, or the moment we identify the programming that we don't want, is the moment we begin to make a different choice. Or at least we have the option to make a different choice. Why? Because when we are not in tune with our programming, we don't know how we work. We have no conscious awareness of it. And we create our life based on our programming. So if you are holding on to a limited programming that tells you something is wrong, then you are effectively creating from that space. Identifying that belief system gives you an option to create a new belief system. Okay? One that says, I am capable. One that doesn't say, I identify with something being wrong. One that says, I identify with something that is right. And that takes you in a different direction. It changes the trajectory of your life. So pile number 2, you are identifying self-beliefs and outmoded scripts in your mind that are running underneath your awareness, that are responsible for how you live your life. And here's a message I'm getting, the message that I'm hearing. I will no longer identify with how other people want to identify me. In other words, if you grew up and someone said, you should be this, you should be this, you should be this, and then you took that upon yourself and you became that, then you are choosing to no longer do that. Oftentimes, when we adopt other people's ideas of who we need to be, it's almost always for the purpose of seeking love, acceptance, safety, and security. Appeasing somebody. Why would we want to appease somebody? Because it gives us something in return, whatever it may be. So pile number 2, perhaps you're looking at what you do to appease other people in order to be accepted, because you believe that if you are yourself, you're not going to be enough. Now, of course, we talked about this a lot. It's nonsense. You cannot not be enough. You already are all part of all that is. Okay? You cannot not be enough. The not enoughness is a human structure. It's your understanding of yourself. It's your conditioning. And you are looking at this conditioning, you are looking at this structure, this limiting structure, and you're saying to yourself, is this really who I am? If you identify yourself as someone who is not enough, then is this really who I am? Because remember, who you believe yourself to be, you are. What you believe yourself to be, you are. What you will embody, when you say I am, you are that. So you are looking at your inner structures and you are identifying the structures within yourself that are limiting, and you are realizing they're no longer serving you. They might have served you at some point, but they're no longer serving you. Okay? In other words, you are protesting against old rules that were placed upon you. And because you didn't know any different, you didn't know any better, you have adopted these rules. These rules, as good as they were at some point, were limiting, and now they're becoming very limiting. They're limiting to the point where your life is, you are seeing life as in terms of limitations rather than in terms of opportunities and abundance. And you are looking at this limited concept and you're saying, is this really who I am? And you are choosing to say, no, thank you. Okay? And that's a big deal, because when you begin to disidentify yourself with the concept of lack, for example, or the limitation or the belief or idea that you are somehow not enough, the moment you disidentify with I am not enough is the moment when you are beginning to embody more of I am enough. And of course you are enough. You are enough to be here and do, quote unquote, God's work. You can call it whatever name you want. Okay? You cannot not be not enough. But some of you have a pattern of holding yourself back because you believe on some level that you are not enough. And that's, again, very prevalent condition in our human society. I certainly know a lot about that. I wrote the thesis on it. So the whole enough, not enoughness is a big theme. Into the unknown. This is asking you to trust the process. What process are we talking about? The process of cultivating new ideas. What does it mean to cultivate new ideas? To bring new ideas to life. Idea is an idea, it's a concept, and then when we adopt these ideas, we begin to create based on those ideas and these concepts. And this takes time. When you have identified, for example, with yourself as someone who is not enough, it takes a little while to begin to see yourself from a different perspective, because the whole not enoughness notion is part of your identity. Okay? You may not know how you identify with yourself right now, but all you have to do is just tune in and ask yourself, how do I feel about myself? If I was to look at myself from a higher perspective, and if I was to see myself from that higher perspective, what would I see about myself? How do I limit myself? How do I hold myself back? And trust the process that when you begin to see how you hold yourself back, and you ask the universe to help you to move away from this holding yourself back, even though you don't know how it's going to happen, it will be revealed to you. Okay, different pieces of information will be given to you, different situations will be put in front of you in order to help you reestablish yourself from a different perspective. Okay, and that takes some work, that takes some courage. It's not easy to give up on something that you have relied on all or most of your life. In other words, if you believe that you are not enough, again, that's a very prevalent condition. It could be anything else that's limiting, but that's just an example. If you had that, if that's part of your structure, then that means that this structure has become part of your identity. Your identity is what is you. It's what makes you feel safe. It's what gives you consistency. It's what you identify as you. To let go of that can be a little bit unsettling at the beginning, because you're letting go of a structure that has been a part of you for a very long time, and you've learned to depend on it. In other words, when you express this I am not enough, you know what to expect. It's new to you. It's not new to you. It's oddly comfortable. So it's almost an irony that to let go of that is and to embody something much more expanded, and more expanded view of yourself, will become uncomfortable at first, simply because you're not used to seeing yourself from a much broader, higher, expanded perspective. So letting go of an ego, of an egoic identity is letting go of an internal structure, and structures is what support us in life. So in many ways, letting go of the not enoughness is letting go of a certain way of practicing your life. And we practice life all the time. We just don't have awareness of how we practice. So for you, pile number one is to identify how you practice your limiting identity. When you say, for example, to yourself, or when you believe that I am not enough, how do you practice your not enoughness every day? Likely you hold yourself back. Perhaps you feel your words are not important. Perhaps you hold yourself from speaking your truth. Perhaps you hold yourself from attracting money. I mean, there is literally gazillion ways we do that. We humans are very good at that. Your job, pile number two, is to identify what that is for you right now. Okay? And shift your priority from focusing on what is wrong to focusing more on what is right. What is right with you? What is phenomenal about you? What is amazing about you? Because you are a gift. Every single individual, every single everything is a gift. And you come in a certain package, you're a gift. Integration. That's very apropos, because integration is about integrating polarities. Again, using the idea of not enoughness. Not enough is the opposite of wholeness. Not enough means something is missing. Wholeness depicts nothing is missing. So you are in the process of being able to expand into a whole new dimension by bridging your own polarities. You understand what not enoughness feels like. You do not need to repeat that again unless you want to. And why on earth would you want to? I wouldn't. So it's to accept on one level that this is what your experience has been, this is what you identify yourself as, but choosing to no longer identify yourself as, and understanding that this identification served a purpose. It helped you understand yourself from a lack-full space, and that's an experience. So integrating polarities is what makes us feel whole. I guarantee you, when you begin to feel more wholeness within you, when you begin to embody more wholeness, you're never going to identify with yourself ever again as someone that's not enough, because you're going to think it's ridiculous. I'm going to read this to you. The frequency of integration supports our embrace of every aspect of ourselves, allowing what we perceive as positive and what we perceive as negative to harmonize in a balanced symphony of life. You are more than what you are currently experiencing. Okay? I just heard, you're not an anomaly, you're just like everybody else. What does that mean? Everyone is here to experience a human condition, to experience an understanding from a human perspective. We all experience what's called a human condition. We all experience pain, we all experience joy, we all experience the plethora of different feelings and emotions and states of mind. We're not unique in that way, but we experience it we're experiencing it all in our own unique way. So although we are all experiencing the same thing, we are individually experiencing it from a different perspective. You as an individual have a perspective. You hold a perspective. The universe sees itself through your perspective. The universe has already seen itself through your perspective of lack, and now you can choose to move to the perspective of abundance, of plenty, of unconditional, of less limiting. And this is a very freeing experience for you. I personally work with clients predominantly with bridging polarities through inner child work and through shadow work, and it's pretty extraordinary. It creates pretty extraordinary experiences, because for the first time in people's lives, people begin to realize the truth of who they are, not what they were holding on to, particularly when they were holding on to something that's limiting. Pile number two, always remember, whatever limits you is your own understanding of yourself. That's what limits you. Okay? I can't limit you. I mean, yes, I can physically restrain you, but I'm talking about the mind. Okay? I can't limit your mind. The only way I could limit your mind is I give you something that's limited and you grab onto that limitation and you make it yours. That's a choice. It may not feel like a choice because it may not be happening on a conscious level, but it is a choice on a certain level. So pile number 2, this is about helping you understand what you choose every day without knowing that you are choosing it. If you choose, quote unquote, to see yourself as inadequate or not enough, understand that that is a choice. It is not a choice that you are consciously making because you've done it so many times. You are not making it consciously. It's a pattern. And remember, humanity is moving on, as they say, towards creation with new patterns or through new, more expanded patterns. So what are your patterns, pile number 2, that hold you back? Now, the pointing of the word of relaxation. I just heard be more compliant towards your unity. I'm not quite sure what that means. It's almost like you're resisting embodying the unified field. Why would you be resisting embodying the unified field? Because you don't know what the unified field is. I'm just gonna let that come through. Unified field consists of all that is unconditional. We are used to living from a space of conditional. So moving from a space of conditional to unconditional can feel a little bit awkward at first. I'll give you an example. When I first experienced a being holding me and giving me unconditional love, it was probably one of the most painful experiences in my entire life. The level of love that I was receiving, it was so incredible that it was painful. Now, the only reason why that it was painful is because my own construct within myself was not able to embrace it all because it believed it cannot be that, or it cannot experience that, or is not worthy of that. So there was a massive vibrational resistance. We often resist that which we want. It's an anomaly if you think logically. Why would we resist that which we want? Well, most of the time that which we desire is we are at conflict with. For example, if you're looking for unconditional love, but you believe that you are not enough to be loved, you're not going to let love in. Not because you don't want to experience it, it's because you will not accept it. Your truth will win. That's why it's important for you to look at your own conditioning in terms of your limiting condition and ask yourself the question, how do I hold myself back? How do I hold back from life, especially if I want to experience something more? And then identify the truths you hold that are standing in the way. And that's when you become empowered, because that's when you realize what the truth is, and then you can change your life if you want to. If you want to, and you don't have to. Okay? So that's what I have for you, pile number 2. Let's see what we have for you, pile number 3. When I was focusing on your pile, the phrase I got was conflict resolution, inner harmony. I like that. We have joy, we have crown chakra, and we have goblins in reverse. Okay, so let me just... The first thing I get is moving away from conflicts. Not running away from conflicts, but moving away from conflict, choosing to no longer be at conflict or in conflict, either with yourself or with somebody else. When we are in conflict, we are not able to move on because the conflict keeps us stuck. We are effectively engaged energetically in this conflict. So the more we are at conflict with ourselves, the more we are engaged in that conflict, effectively giving the conflict our energy. The moment we move away from the conflict is the moment where we can take our energy back and use that energy somewhere else in a way that's more positive, more expanded, and more creative. Now, I also want to say it's not easy to move away from conflicts because we don't want to run away from conflicts. Running away from a conflict is never going to happen because what you're running away is something inside of you, which is something you cannot run away from. Conflict. You cannot run away from you. Conflict happens on the inside, right? The moment the conflict on the inside disappears is the moment where you're not experiencing conflict because you experience conflict on the inside. It's about understanding what makes you conflicted, or what makes you be at conflict with you or with someone else, and choosing to resolve this conflict, your inner conflict or outer conflict. And outer conflict is often the result of some inner conflict, but it's about making a choice and moving away from conflict by resolving the conflict and moving more towards something else, which is a lot more joyful, okay? What I'm getting here is an energetic movement, and I'm feeling whenever you hear this up until March of 2024 is going to feel like you are on this moving away or resolving conflicts. We as humans all have some conflicts within us. It's just the way it is. Some conflicts make a huge difference in our lives. Some conflicts are minimal. I don't feel you're going to be addressing every single conflict, but it looks like you are moving away from the types of conflicts that keep you stuck either in a certain situation, in a certain scenario, or in a certain way of seeing or being with yourself. Okay? The self being very important. Conflict number one for some of you, you hold yourself responsible for other people's emotions. Now, that is that's a very difficult thing. I know a little bit about that myself, actually a lot, because when you are responsible for other people's emotions, you are making their emotions your responsibility. And although we do absolutely, play part in how other people feel, we do add to how other people feel, and other people do add to how we feel. Being responsible for how someone feels is they're saying is a hazardous proposition. Why is it hazardous? Why is it dangerous? Because what if how someone feels is based on their own inner conflict, and you are making yourself responsible for their inner conflict? You cannot be responsible for their inner conflict because it's their conflict, it's not yours. And perhaps you are someone who feels a lot. Perhaps you're someone who's very sensitive, and you naturally just take on other people's energy. But this is about identifying what is yours and what is not yours. What is your priority? What is not your priority? What is your responsibility? What is not your responsibility? Okay. If someone doesn't feel good about themselves, for example, and they blame you for it, be mindful that their blame you for it is a way of disowning their responsibility for how they feel. Okay, I'm not saying you don't play part in it, but it's their way of disowning their responsibility for how they feel, and then they give that responsibility onto you. And it often is called a projection. They project their emotions on you or their feelings on you, and they want make you responsible for it, and you try to figure it out. You can't. You're never going to be able to. You're not supposed to. That's not how it's done. You can identify if you play a part in how a person feels. But if you are honest with yourself and if you are truthful and you realize that how they feel about themselves is largely due to how they feel about themselves, placing it on you is not going to do anything. So you trying to figure out how to help a person feel better about themselves is not going to do much good, because they first have to take the responsibility for themselves. Okay? And you're someone who's learning how to discern that right now. Okay? I can certainly connect with that by being open on a platform. You know, I am exposed to a whole bunch of different types of comments, and some comments are meant to be hurtful for whatever reason. I guess it makes people happy. And I used to often, I grab that, make that my responsibility. And it took me a really long time to say, that's not mine. I still get caught in it sometimes, but it's easier for me to say, that's not mine. I feel like you are identifying more strongly with yourself, pile number 3, and you are realizing that how other people feel about themselves or how they feel about you has nothing to do with you. It has mostly to do with them. It doesn't mean you don't play part in it, but this is about you no longer trying to fix or trying to even understand why people feel the way they do and why they place that on you. You're basically drawing a line and you're saying, that's not mine. Okay? What if you're trying to be helpful and you're trying to understand how someone feels? By all means, have compassion. As a matter of fact, have compassion, number 1, but don't identify with it. Don't identify with somebody else's unhappiness as your unhappiness to fix. Okay, and this is I've seen this a lot, and I've experienced this in my journey as well. When somebody comes for help and they're not happy, I used to make it my responsibility to make them happy, to fix it for them. And I used to put a lot of pressure on myself. It's like all of a sudden I felt this responsibility placed on me. And I identified with it, and it was very, very hard because oftentimes I was very frustrated because I was not able to, make a person feel happy, for example. And then I realized I can't do that. I absolutely cannot do that. I can have compassion. I can offer a person guidance. I can help them see a certain way, but ultimately the decision to be happy is up to them. So I don't know who you are. Perhaps you are a healer. Perhaps you are someone who gives people guidance. Perhaps you are someone who takes care of others. But it's like you're drawing this invisible line between yourself and themselves, and you're not taking on their emotions as your responsibility. You are helpful, you are kind, you are compassionate, but you're no longer taking that as your own responsibility. And and you're becoming wiser for it. Why is that? Because if you identify with their energy, it's almost like you lose ability to be of help to them. How is that? How do they lose ability to be of help to them? When you identify with somebody's unhappiness and you make it yours, you're now stuck in that energy. You're trying to figure it out, but it's not yours to figure out. That's what I'm getting. All right. Goblins. So goblins is an interesting card because it talks about what's lurking in the dark. Okay. In reverse, it essentially is saying to me, don't deny your conflicts. Okay. Again, we're all conflicted. I think I talked about it in pile 2. Don't deny your own conflicts, but it feels like there's something that wants to come through. Just give me a moment. Okay, when I see Don't deny your conflicts. It's don't deny what is your conflict, but don't be your conflict. Okay? Help me understand a little bit more. When you identify with your own inner conflict, you become the conflict itself. When you see the inner conflict from a distance, you can reorganize almost this. It's almost like you can reorganize this conflict. You can reshape your perception of it. And because of that, you can move on from your conflict. So again, maybe you're someone who is conflicted because you don't know how to help a person. Okay? I'm talking about helping here for some reason. And you have this conflict that you're giving somebody guidance and they're not changing. They're not getting quote unquote better. They're not benefiting. If that's you, and if you are conflicted with it, ask yourself, how much is my ego invested in someone else's change? Okay. Here's why. If your ego is invested in somebody else's change, I'm not saying that it's a bad place, but it could be that your ego identifies itself with the change you want the person to be. In other words, if they're not changing, somehow you believe something is wrong with you or you're not doing a good job. Where in fact, what I want to say is that it's not that you're not doing a good job, is perhaps you are wanting this change for this other person more than they want the change for themselves. Okay? So ask yourself, what is my investment in seeing someone change? Is it because you want a better life for them? That's probably what it is. But if you want it more than they want it, then you're in a trap. Because if they want it less than you want it for them, then you're going to end up wanting to do the work for them, or you're going to end up thinking that you have to do it for them. You can't. It's their life. Again, you can help, you can be helpful, you can be compassionate, you can show them the way, absolutely. But at the end of the day, that person has to make a choice and create something different for themselves. You can't do that for them. Okay? You heard the phrase, you can only lead horse to water, but you cannot have him drink the water. You cannot force him to drink the water. This is kind of sort of the message that I'm getting. So I have a feeling that this is a message for healers, or for the types of healers that, or for the types of people that identify themselves as healers in some capacity. And you're heavily invested in seeing somebody healed. Although that's beautiful, that's what I do. I want people to be healed, but I also recognize that I cannot do it for them. I cannot make them be healed. I can help them, I can energetically support them, my team can support them, but at the end of the day, they need to want it, which means they need to want to disidentify themselves with what is, in order to be something different, in order to experience something different. Okay? Oftentimes, I used to think as a healer that if someone was not changing the way I wanted them to change, or my idea was for them in terms of change, then something was wrong with me, or I wasn't doing a good job. And it was a learning I had to go through in order to go, wait a second, this is not healthy for me, this is not productive for me, because what I'm essentially doing is I am investing my ego, and whether they heal or not heal the way I want them to heal is going to mean something about me. That's not the case. So my ego was deriving value from a person healing in a certain way. And if the person didn't heal the way I wanted them to heal, then somehow my ego was feeling not of value. And that's a trap. That's a huge trap. Okay. So whether I'm talking to somebody who is in that position or you are going to be in that position, it's really important that you check yourself in terms of your own investment. If you are someone who is trying to show somebody a better way, bear in mind that they may say they want a better way, but they may not be willing to let go of their inner conflict in order to have a better way. And they have to be involved in wanting. They have to be involved in creating that change. You cannot change that for them. And I feel like it's gonna, if this is you, if you identify with that, this is going to make your job a lot easier, because you're going to realize that at the end of the day, all you can do is do your best, to the best of your ability, to the best of your knowledge, to the best of your understanding. Share with people in the best way you know how, but they play a part in it. Okay. Some people have this feeling that they're here to save other people. Of course, if something landed on top of somebody and you need to grab a person so that they wouldn't get hurt, yes, of course, but I'm not talking about that. If there is someone out there who believes that you need to save the world, that's not going to happen. Or you need to save a person, you have a hard road ahead of you. It's because you cannot save a person that doesn't want to be saved. You cannot save a person that doesn't want to be helped. They have to help themselves. Okay, so this is a message for somebody. I don't know who this is, but it's a message for somebody. And then we have the crown chakra, okay? So what I'm getting from this is there's a lot of high harmonic frequency that are coming through for you through your crown chakra. I'm also hearing blue beings. You are likely someone who connects with blue beings. I feel like this message is for me, actually. And these blue beings, or these other dimensional beings, there's a lot of them around you. They have information to offer to you, and you are ready for this information now. You are ready and qualified for this information. I feel like you have been keeping yourself separate from this information because there was a part of you that didn't know if you could, quote unquote, handle it. You more than can handle it now. You were not in a position to handle it before. Why were you not in a position to handle it? Because your own insecurities were standing in the way. Okay, so again, we need to work on our foundation, and the more insecurities we hold, the more we are closing ourselves off from potentially what could be coming to us from higher vibrations. But it sounds like pile number 3. You're in a position right now where you're like an open vessel, and information can much more freely come to you. And I see a lot of beings all around you wanting to give you information and share information. Your job is to know what you want to experience. If you want to experience connecting with higher vibrational beings in order to be an exchange of higher vibrational information, higher vibrational knowledge, then state that intention out into the world. And I feel like they're already lined up. So I don't know who you are. I don't know who I'm talking to, but if you connect with the idea of blue beings or higher dimensional beings, spirit, then that message is for you. You are more than ready. Throat chakra is being identified here as potentially something that you might be struggling with a little bit. I feel like there is still a little bit of work to do on your throat chakra, but it feels way, 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 way less than before. Remember, you're a vessel, okay? The more you are plugged in with energetic blockages, the more you will resist this higher frequency, okay? And you are in a perfect position right now. You're in a very opportune position right now, between now and end of next year, 2024. You're in a very good position to be in the receivership of this higher frequency. all I'm getting is a ball of light, light, you experiencing light. Is there anything else? I just heard it's time to move on. I just saw you walking out of a cycle, taking what you've learned and moving on. So pile number 3, you're at end of cycles. We are all at the end of a cycle, but for you particularly, you are at you are just about to finish a cycle. So that's what I have for you, pile number 3. I hope this was helpful. By the way, I just realized that my Facebook page, Joanna the Healer, got hacked. So if you get any strange messages, me asking you to click on things, that is not me. Guess 'tis the season to hack, social media. It's not new to me, but keep in mind, I will never email you or ask you to pay me something, to have a reading with me on via text. You will always book with me through normal process, through a booking space. You will always see me on camera, and the information will always be coming from joannathehealer.com. So never entertain anything other than that information. I will never ask you for payment. I don't give predictions. So keep that in mind. And if you could report them, that would be great. So that's all I have for you. I am still working on the 2024 predictions, the survival guides. I'm almost done. They should be ready second or third week of December. So for those of you who purchased session with me, you will be receiving those by the end of this year. And if you are interested in purchasing those, you can connect with me by clicking on the link below to get some goodies, or just stay tuned and I will be announcing when they are ready. Until next week, I look forward to seeing you again. Take care of yourself and see you soon. Bye-bye.